one. For official, how I say, recording purposes, these are the topics that we'll be doing today. But usually to do this topic, you need to know these topics properly as well. Sine, tan, and cosine. Now, I know in this particular class, the Monday class, we did not do sine, tan, and cosine. So I'm going to try to avoid giving you any questions that involve sine, tan, and cosine. I will try to keep it out. But I cannot help it. I will have to mix in Pythagoras theorem because we did that in class. We did algebra. We spent a lot of time on solving for x and whatnot. And I know we spent a lot of time, a lot of time on cross multiplication. All right, so let's get started. I'll try my best to review the underlying topics so you're not too lost in class. As you know, your memory might have faded for a little while since it's quite last year. We did those topics. So I want everyone to screenshot this for me. These are all the topics, all the formulas that involves areas and perimeters and volumes. I know it looks scary, but I just want you to screenshot it. And don't worry, as we do different shapes, I will write down back the formula for you, and eventually you will get accustomed with all of these formulas. Let me know when you're finished taking your screenshot. So let's start off with a question from about 5 years ago, right? So in front of you has the world's simplest shape, a square. All right. So everyone just quickly draw a square for me. And I'm going to give you a real easy question to start off with. Let's say that you have a square where one side is 7 centimeters, but I am telling you it's a square. So it's written somewhere in the question. Quickly, right? No one is supposed to get this wrong. I want you to find two things for me: the area of the square and the perimeter of the square. Easy stuff, but enjoy it while the questions are easy. All right, so let's work this out. We all know that the area of a square, right, is side multiplied by side. Or some people instead of saying side multiplied by side, well, when you multiply two same things in maths, it's that squared. So any one of those will give you the same answer. All right, so it doesn't matter which way you work it out. One side is 7 by 7, or you could have said 7 squared. Both ways are going to give you 49, but areas is measured in something squared. So it has to be in centimeters what? Squared. Right? Only a few people forgot the units, or you typed in the units wrong. One of them. The perimeter is the distance along the shape. But some people say around the shape, okay? Now, in a square, all the sides have the same exact length, right? That's been drilled into your head since primary school. So the perimeter is just 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7, right? You just pretend you're running around the shape, and you just count how much centimeters what you run. So you could say 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus another 7, or 7 multiplied by 4, which is going to be 28 centimeters, not centimeters squared. Perimeter is just a length. Okay? Great. So real simple question. Next question. If I were to draw a diagonal, let's call this corner of the square A, and let's call this corner of the square B. If I were to connect A to B, can anyone tell me what the length of the line AB would be? I'm going to put a question mark here. What would be the length of the blue line? Good luck. Send the answer on the chat. Quick question. Can Pythagoras theorem be used for any type of triangle? Yes or no? can Pythagoras theorem be used for any type of triangle? Right, so the class is divided. The answer to that is no. This formula over here, right? Now, in the exam, the examiner will not be nice enough to write Pythagoras theorem like this, right? So this here is Pythagoras theorem. Pythagoras theorem can only be used for right angle triangles. I'm going to write it here. If you look back in the notes, you will see that. Can only be used for right angle triangles. It cannot be used for any other type of triangle in the world. Now, if you look at this diagram, we all know the corners of a square, right? Have what? 90 degrees, or all corners of the square. Let's put in two, right? But all corners is 90 degrees. So if I just put in the letter C here, right? A, B, C is definitely a right angle triangle, because a right angle triangle means it has what? A 90 degrees in it. Which formula are we going to use? Because Pythagoras theorem is used in a right angle triangle when they give you the length of two sides and you have to find a missing side. Which formula, which version of Pythagoras theorem are we going to use? The one on top or the one underneath? The one on top or the one underneath? Which one? Go back to 3 months ago. What do you all remember? Right, we're going to use the one on top because AB, do you see that blue line? He is the hypotenuse. I put an HYP for hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is always opposite the right angle. The other two sides, which is CB and CA, those are what you call legs. So each one of these here is a leg. I call them regular boring sides. So anytime you're trying to find the hypotenuse, you use the one with the addition sign. So let's find AB. To find AB, which is the hypotenuse, is square root. You take one leg and square it, and you square the other leg. So it's 7 squared plus 7 squared. Now you have to be careful. Do not press the square root sign first. Work out this part first. 7 squared is 49, and 7 squared again is another 49. Forget that big square root sign for the time being. 49 plus 49 is 98. Square root 98, it is square root last. So how much is the square root of 98, right? So square root, I'm looking for the square root button on my calculator. And I'm getting this on my calculator, 9.899 or something like that. Now I ask you to go to 2 decimal places, right? So I want him and I want him. You have to add, because this number is 5 and more, you have to add 1 to the 9, but he becomes 10, which means you have to add 1 to him. So you'll get 9.90 centimeters. Quick question. If they ask you to round it off to 2 centimeters, sorry, to 2 decimal places in the CSEC exam, do I have to put the 0? Because we all know 0 is nothing. But do we have to put the 0 to make it 2 decimal places if you're supposed to go to 2 decimal places? The answer is yes, sir, right? Because 0 is a number. If you only put in 9.9 and you leave out the 0, that is 1 decimal place. 2 decimal places, you have to put the 0. And you can lose an entire mark for something so simple. Real unfair, right? I know that's very, very unfair. All right. So take down what you need to take down, and I want to change up this question a little bit. So when you were writing SEA in primary school, right? I know everyone would have remembered this question. Let's say that I gave you the area of the triangle. So I am telling you that the area of this triangle is, let's call it 64 centimeters squared. So that's given to you in the exam. Here's what I want you to find. I want you to find the perimeter of this square, right? So the area of the square is 64 centimeters squared, but I want the perimeter of the square. Good luck. Now, remember how you would do this in primary school. To find the area of a triangle, remember all the sides of all sides of a square. Saying triangle, sorry, I meant square. To find the area of a square is side multiplied by side, or side squared, right? So if this side is x, this side would also be x, and he would be x, or he would also be x. So in other words, to find the area of a square, you would have to say x squared is equal to 64, because when you square the sides, you will get 64. What squared will give you 64? You can even use algebra for this. And you could throw across the squared, and I showed you all a couple of weeks ago. When you throw across something across an equal sign, it becomes the opposite. So when you throw across a squared and you'll get square root, how much is the square root of 64? 8. So that means each side of this square is 8 centimeters. But you all didn't even need to use transposition for this. You automatically know, you will have asked yourself, hey, what squared will give me 64? And then you remember, hey, 8 squared is 64. So now we know each side of the square is 8. How much is the perimeter? 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, or 8 by 4, which is 32 centimeters. For those who got 16 as the answer, do you see your mistake now? Let me know. A lot of, literally half the class sent 16 as the perimeter. Right, moving on to the rectangle. So let's just do some quick questions here. I'm gonna ask you to find, obviously, the area and the perimeter to start off with, right? Let's say here is 8 centimeters, and here is, let's just call it 5 centimeters. Quickly find the area and the perimeter. No tricks in this question as yet. One thing, while you're at it, I want you to find the length of the blue line for me one time, right? Find the length of the blue line AB one time, right? So you have 3 things to find for me. The area of a rectangle is just length by breadth, okay? Length is 8, the breadth is 5, so 8 by 5 is 40 centimeters squared. Easy stuff. The opposite sides of a rectangle have the same length. So if this side is 8, the opposite side is also 8. If he is 5, the opposite side is also 5. So the perimeter is just what? 8 plus 5 plus 8 plus 5, right? Some people, well, let's add it up like that. 8 plus 5 plus 8 plus 5. You just add up all you pretend you're running around the shape, right? 8 plus 5 is 13, plus our next 13, because 8 plus 5 is another 13. I think we're going to get 26 centimeters. Great. And to find the length AB, once again, the corners of our rectangle are 90 degrees. So if I call here C, ABC is another right angle triangle. The blue line is the hypotenuse because it is opposite the right angle. So we're going to use the top formula again, right? So it's just One side, one leg is 8, one leg is 5. So you say 8 squared plus 5 squared. It doesn't matter if you put the 5 first or the 8 first. It really doesn't matter. But you square root last, work out the inside piece first. 8 squared, 64. 5 squared, 25. Add those two square rooted. I can't do that in my head. 64 plus 25 is 89. Square root 89. Let's see. I'm getting 9.43. I run another space here, so putting centimeters underneath. Right. Most people got it correct. Only I think about 2 people who sent answers got the last part wrong. Everybody got the first 2 pieces correct. For those who got the last part wrong, just let me know if you saw your mistake as usual. I'm going to change up this question now, erasing all of this, right? Let's say the examiner starts off the question like this. I'm going to call this corner P and this other corner Q. So I'm going to join this, right? I am going to tell you the length of PQ is 13 centimeters. And then the length from R to Q is, let's call it 7 centimeters. Here's what I want you to do now. I want you to find back the area and perimeter of this new rectangle. What's the area and perimeter of this triangle? Hey, I keep saying triangle, rectangle. Good luck, and I'll give you 2 minutes to come up with something. You have 2 answers for me, for the area and the perimeter. Now, the opposite sides of our rectangle are equal. So if here's 7, we know this side is also 7 centimeters. We know here's 90 degrees, but we don't have the length of the rectangle, right? I'll just call here S, right? So we don't have the length of SQ, but we have a right angle triangle and we have the length of 2 sides. Couldn't we use Pythagoras theorem to find SQ? Now ask yourself, if the 13 centimeters is opposite the right angle, then the 13 centimeters is the hypotenuse. SQ, well, he's a regular boring side or a leg. When you are trying to find a leg, which I also call a regular boring side, you use this formula, the one with the minus sign instead. So to find SQ, we just have to take the length of the hypotenuse, which is 13. You always put your hypotenuse first in that version of the formula. 13 squared minus the length of the leg they gave you, which is 7 squared, and you square root last. So let's work this out. 13 squared is 169. 7 squared is 49. Can't do that in my head. 169 minus 49 is 120. When we square root 120, how much of you all seen this on the calculator? 10.95. I'm going to 2 decimal places because I know the examiner will appreciate that, right? Right. So 10.95. Now, if this side is 10.95, the side opposite is also 10.95. It's so easy to find the area and perimeter now. Area is just what? Length multiplied by breadth. So the length is how much? 10.95 and the breadth is 7. Multiply it. 10.95 by 7 is roughly 76.65 centimeters squared. Now, obviously, if you round this off differently, right? Like if you round it off to 10.9 or 11, obviously your final answer is going to look slightly different from mine, okay? The perimeter, we just have to add up 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's just add them up, right? 10.95, we have 2 of that. And then we have to add 7 and the next 7, right? Just adding up all. 10.95. Anybody got this? 35.9 centimeters. And if the examiner said he wanted it to 2 decimal places, if you have to put a 0 here, right? But for today, I will accept 35.9 as correct. Right, so you guys slowly seeing how areas and perimeters could easily incorporate another topic, Pythagoras theorem. And that is how it's going to be in your exams. Nobody's going to give you a straight areas question or a straight perimeter question, right? Let's go, guys. Circles now. Now we have to come to some agreement here on circles. We know there are 2 formulas to find the area of a, not 2 formulas, there are 2 major things they ask you to, when it comes to a circle. It's either you find the area of a circle or the circumference of a circle, which is the distance around the circle. However, when it comes to the circle, there's this thing called pi. And this causes a lot of problems, right? Especially when a teacher is working out solutions, your answer may look slightly different to the teacher's answer or even in a textbook, right? Pi. Anybody remembers what the value of pi is? Remember, pi is how much? 22 over what? 7, okay? Now, also, if you type in 22 over 7 on your calculator, right? You're going to get roughly 3.14, okay? Tell me something. Is 22 over 7 the same exact thing as 3.14? In class. 22 over 7 is not the same thing as 3.14. 3.14 is the rounded up version of 22 over 7. Okay, it's not the same thing. In fact, if you do your calculations with 22 over 7 as opposed to doing it with 3.14, you will get slightly different answers. And that could cause a little problem in class, right? Because your answer will look slightly different to mine's. So let's all come to the agreement, right? In this class, we will always, always, always be using pi as how much? 22 over 7. Don't worry, you don't have to worry about typing in fractions or on your calculator. It have a way to bypass that, right? So I'm letting you all know, right? For all our calculations on circles, we're using the full fraction, 22 over 7. Also, a few weeks ago, I mentioned something. If I have 2/3 x, right? Now, this obviously means 2/3 multiplied by x because there's nothing in between here. Where does that x belong? Does that x belong on top or does that x belong underneath? Right, it belongs on top. I mean, when you're doing your calculations, right? I mentioned this a few weeks ago. This x actually belongs on top. So you should rewrite it like this. 2x divided by 3. That will make your life way easier when you are doing calculations. So in other words, if I have 22 over 7 and I have multiplied by r squared, I just say how this r squared is in the middle to make life easier. Just put the r squared where? On top, and then put the divide by 7. So the moral of the story is when you have a fraction and something is smack in the middle, pretend it belongs to the top and rewrite it as if it is on top. That will make your life easy. So let's get started with some formulas over here, right? Some formulas. To find the area of a circle, right? The area of a circle is pi 22 over 7 multiplied by the radius squared. Now remember, the radius is from the center of the circle to the circumference. That's your radius. Radius and diameter is different. Diameter is from one side of the circumference through the center to the other side. So this pink line, the whole pink line, is the diameter. And the symbol for diameter is usually capital what? D. To find the circumference of the circle, right? Circumference, who was spelled it correct there? That's the distance around the circle. There are two formulas you can use, right? Pi, which is 22 over 7, multiplied by diameter, or 2 multiplied by pi multiplied by radius. Any one of these will give you the same answer for the circumference. The diameter is always twice the length of the radius. So that's why the D, you can replace it with a 2 and a R, because 2 multiplied by R is the same thing as diameter. I am not a fan of this formula. I dislike this formula. So I will not be using this formula. So to find the circumference of a circle is pi multiplied by diameter. And diameter is always twice the radius. So let's try a beginner's question here, right? Let me just erase this here. For this particular circle, if I tell you the radius is 8 centimeters, I want you to find two things for me: the area and the circumference. Remember, we said we would use pi as 22 over 7. Give it a try, and let's see what you guys come up with. So this is how they would write the area in most textbooks, right? But remember, how you have 22 over 7 multiplied by r squared. It could confuse you a little bit, right? So pretend the r squared is on top. So you want to write it like this: 22 multiplied by the r squared. You see how the r squared on top with the 22? And then you divide by what? 7. So that should make it easier. So it's, let me get a different color here. 22 multiplied by, how much is the radius? Well, the radius is 8. So it's 8 squared divided by 7. We all know 8 squared is 64, right? So, or you can just type in 8 squared on the calculator. Let's see what we get. 22 multiplied by 64, which is 8 squared, divided by 7. That's a press the wrong button. 22 multiplied by 64. I'm getting this on my calculator: 201.14 to 2 decimal places. Now, looking at all the answers, so far, everyone who submitted an answer had it correct. So that's good news. Right. Right. If your calculator gives you the answer as a fraction, because everybody has different, different types of calculators, and some Casios will give you the answer as a fraction. But once you're seeing the 201, take it as correct today. Let's find the circumference. Circumference is the distance around the circle. You see how this D is in the middle? Don't work with that. Rewrite it so the D is on top with the 22. Now, quick question. I think a few people got this wrong. How much is the diameter? Now, I didn't come out and tell you the length of the diameter, but you're supposed to reason it out. Remember, the diameter is twice the length of the radius. So the diameter is from one side to the other side. So if here's 8 and here would be another 8, right? The diameter is 16, or the radius multiplied by 2. So take 22 multiplied by 16 and divided by 7. 22 multiplied by 16 divided by 7. And I'm getting this to 2 decimal places. No problem, Deshaun. 50.29 centimeters. Now, my circumference is a distance, right? Because if you look at it, it was 50.2857. The third decimal place is 5. When it's 5 or more, you have to add 1. So you have to have 50.29 to get full marks in the exam. Well, in a CXC exam in any case. Right? A couple of people got this one wrong because they had the wrong diameter. For those who got it wrong, you think you saw your mistake? Let me know in the chat. Right. So let's try a trick question now. Remember, the area of a circle is 22 over 7 multiplied by the radius squared. So now let's say that the examiner tells you that the area of this circle is 200 centimeters squared, right? So they start off by giving you the area of the circle. Here's the question now. They want you to find the radius. They want you to backtrack and find the radius. In other words, they want you to find R of the circle. I'll give you a hint. You will need to cross multiply at some point in the question to find the radius. Also, keep in mind, in maths, when you throw something across the equal sign, it becomes the opposite. Throw across a positive, it becomes a negative. Throw across a multiply, you'll get what? A divide. Throw across a squared, the opposite of a squared is a square root. So just some advice. Good luck, and let's see what you guys come up with. You don't have to get it correct, you just have to try. So let's rewrite this formula, right? Remember, we want to pretend the R squared is on top. So I'll use A for area. Area is equal to 22 multiplied by radius squared divided by 7. A is the same thing as A on 1. Remember, when you divide something by 1, it's a really convenient way of converting it into a fraction. So now that we have two fractions on either side, we have an excuse to cross multiply if we need to. So let's substitute in some values here. I'm going to change the color so it's easier to follow. Right? How much is the area? Well, the examiner told us the area is 200 divided by 1. 22. We don't know the radius. That's the aim of the question. So we just put R squared divided by what? 7. We are trying to solve for the letter what? R. So cross multiplication is our best option. Let's see if you all can remember which diagonal is the correct one to multiply first. Should we multiply the black diagonal first or the green diagonal first? What do you all remember from about 2-3 months ago? Which diagonal would make it easier on us? Which one should we cross multiply first to make life easier? The green one, right? Because we are trying to solve for the letter R. So I always advised you cross multiply that diagonal first. So anything multiplied by 1 is itself. So look up here. Right? So when you multiply anything by 1, you get it yourself. Now multiply the other diagonal. 200 by 7. is 1400. That's when you multiply the black diagonal. You want to solve for R. The 22 is a multiply. Throw across the multiply, you get what? A divide. So we have R squared is equal to, take 1400 divided by 22. We're going to divide this. Let's at least round it off to 2 decimal places. 63.64. Check it on your calculator. If you divide these two and round it off to 2 decimal places, you'll get a 4 here, not a 3. 63.64. And now we're going to solve for R. So we throw across the squared. And what's the opposite of a squared again? A square root. So square root 63.64. And I'm getting roughly 7.98 centimeters. That is the radius, right? Now, I'm going to excuse this one in terms of if everyone gets slightly different answers. 7.9 anything will do, or even if you get 8.01 or 8.02, take it as correct. Because I could see everyone rounding off slightly differently here, right? By mistake. Right. For those who got it wrong, you think you saw your error? Right? It was just applying cross multiplication, right? And transposing. So let's look at this new question now. I am going to give you the area of this circle again, but this time the area, let's call it 78 centimeters squared. So that's the area. Here's the question. Find the circumference of the circle. Find the circumference. All right? Take a 5 minutes with this question. Here's what you need to do first. You need to find your radius of that circle first. So it's almost like the question we just did, except it's a different value for the area. But once you find your radius of that circle, it should be easy afterwards to find the circumference. Right? Keep in mind, the aim of the question is to find the circumference. So that's my final answer. So let's put down the formula for the area. Now, by the area of a circle, if you put the r squared on top, it's 22 multiplied by r squared divided by 7. And we say A, or area, is the same thing as area on 1. We just put that so we have an excuse to cross multiply. The area is 78. We have 22 multiplied by the radius squared. We don't know the value of the radius, but I guarantee you, once we find the radius, finding the circumference will be a breeze. So we cross multiply. Cross multiply this one first, just like in the last example. Anything multiplied by 1 is itself 78 multiplied by 7. I cannot do that in my head. Use my calculator here. 546. We want to solve for R. Mr. 22 is a multiply. Throw it across. We get a divide. Let's move up here. When we divide these two, we should go to 2 decimal places. 24.82, right? I'm sure it's a 2 here. Last step. Throw across the square. The opposite of a squared is square root. Let's square root the second function. 24.82. I'm getting 4.98. Anybody else can agree for that for the radius? That the radius only is 4.98. For those who did not get 4.98, right, I'm still giving you a minute to finish the question, right? You could still, from this point, find the circumference. And, let's pretend you'll get half the marks because I did half for you. So let's find this circumference now. Now, the first thing we should do is probably what? Put down the formula for the examiner on how to find the circumference of a circle. Oh, by the way, in the exam, you get points or marks for putting down the formula before you use it, right? So circumference of a circle is pi, which is 22/7 multiplied by the diameter. Now, we said we could put the diameter on top with the 22 to make life easier. But we have a little problem. We actually don't know the diameter at the moment. We know the radius. But didn't we say the diameter is twice the radius? So to find the diameter, we just have to take the 4.98, and you multiply it by 2, because the diameter is twice the radius. 4.98 multiplied by 2. Anybody got 9.96 for the diameter? If so, it's just to throw it into the formula now. 22 multiplied by 9.96 divided by 7. Type it in on your calculator, and that's it. And I'm getting 31.30 centimeters. I double checking it. A few people are telling me I have it wrong. That's all. 22 multiplied by 9.96. No, I double checked it. I got that answer. Right? I think I have it correct. So if you got it wrong, just type it back in on the calculator. And of course, let me know if you saw your mistake. So we're gonna move on from a full circle. Let's move the test now. To a semicircle. Now, a semicircle is half of a circle. So that's a semicircle in front of you. How do you find half of anything? You always what? Divide it by 2. So just a quick question, right? If here's the center of the circle, right? The circumference, I'm going to give you the radius, right? Now, the radius is from the center to where would have been the center of the entire circle to the circumference, right? So let's say the radius for this question is 11 centimeters. If I were to ask you to find the area of this semicircle, you would take the area of a full circle, which is 22/7. You multiply by the radius squared as usual. But when you are finished working this out, right? You will do what afterwards? You would just divide it by what? 2. Doesn't that make sense? That is how you would find the area of a semicircle. The top part is the area of a full circle. And after you divide it by 2, because a semicircle is half the size of a full circle. So do me a favor. Find the area of that semicircle. The formula, work out the part in brackets first, and whatever you get, just simply divide it by 2 afterwards. So the way that I was telling you to work this out, right, is to work out the brackets part first. Now, we all know that the top part, how you have 22/7, the radius belongs on top of the 22. So it's 22 multiplied by radius squared divided by 7. And then you divide it by 2 afterwards. Okay, so let's work this out, right? Shouldn't be too hard. 22/7 multiplied by 11 squared, because what? Sorry, I wrote it bad there. So 22 multiplied by what? 11 squared, because your radius is 11. 11 squared. We said we would divide it by 7. And afterwards, we would divide the whole thing by 2. 22 multiplied by 11 squared divided by 7. When I worked out the part in the brackets, I'm getting 380 0.29 if I round it off properly. And then I have to divide it by 2. 380.29 divided by 2. And a lot of people got this. Now, people are going to get slightly different things because I know people round it off slightly differently. 190.15. This is what I am getting for the area. I will take 190 point anything. I don't want to get into explanation about the 2 decimal places again. So once you have the 190, take it as correct because I know you have the procedure correct at least. All right. Now, is there another way we could have worked this out and get roughly 190, right? Point something. Well, let me introduce a concept to you guys, right? A little shortcut in maths. Now, a lot of people not accustomed seeing this in maths. Like if I have 2/3, which is a fraction, divided by a whole number, 5. Most people are not accustomed seeing something like that in maths, right? You're not accustomed seeing a fraction on top divided by a whole number. But there's a little shortcut to this. Anytime a fraction is divided by a whole number, right? This is what happens. The answer will be 2/15. Let me explain how I got that. Whenever you divide a fraction by a whole number, all you have to do is take the denominator on top and multiply it by the whole number underneath. So you're just multiplying the 3 and the 5. So the answer is 2/15. There's a little shortcut in maths, right? There's a long way to work this out, but I guarantee you, you will get 2/15. Who can tell me quickly? Well, you don't need to write it down. If I had 7/8 divided by 2, what would that simplify to? Send it quickly on the chat using the shortcut method. Right, you will get 7/16. The top number stays normal, but you multiply the denominator and the whole number, right? 8 by 2 is 16. So where am I going with this, right? Where am I going with this, right? Let's erase all of this. Let's see if we can get the same answer using a slightly different method. Let's say that you don't like this formula. This formula looks kind of complicated, right? You all notice you have a fraction here, 22 multiplied by r squared. The 22 multiplied by r squared is the piece on top. And this 7 is the underneath part, and the 2 is the whole number here. And this can be simplified to this. 22 multiplied by r squared. What number should we put here? If we were to simplify this formula, what number you think will go here? You have a fraction divided by a whole number. What number goes underneath here? 14. So this here can be used to find the area of a semicircle also, because you realize that when you take this formula and simplify it, you get this. Use this formula and tell me if you get the same thing, if you get roughly 190. Take 22, multiplied by the radius squared. You know the radius is 11, so you say 11 squared, and then divided by 14. And tell me if that also gives you roughly the same answer we got just now. All right. Let's see. 22 multiplied by 11 squared divided by 14. I'm going to type in that on my calculator. 22 multiplied by 11 squared divided. Yeah, and I'm getting roughly 190.14 this time. Remember in the last one, we rounded off before we divided by 2. But it's roughly the same answer. Right? So it's up to you. And guys, when you want to find the area of a semicircle, you all could use this formula, or you could use this shortcut formula, right? This shortcut formula is very, very useful when you have to work backwards to find the area of a, sorry, well, when you want to work backwards to find the radius of the semicircle. And that's going to be my next question now, right? So I'm going to erase everything here. I'm going to give you a backwards question now. I am going to tell you that the area of this semicircle is 44 centimeters squared. Your job is to find the radius. Up in R for radius, the radius of that semicircle. It would make much more sense to use the second formula, the shortcut formula, because that shortcut formula makes it really, really easy to cross multiply. So let's see what you guys got here. Right? Find the radius of that semicircle, and my advice is use the second formula, the one with the 14 in it. So since this one will involve some cross multiplication, the area of a semicircle is 22 multiplied by the radius squared divided by 14. That's the better formula to use this time. And area is the same thing as area on 1. So let's substitute in some values here. The area is 44. And we don't know the radius. So it's time to cross multiply as usual. Cross multiply this diagonal first because the R, is involved here. Anything multiplied by 1 is itself. So it's 22 multiplied by R squared. 44 by 14 is 616. The 22 is a multiply, throw it across, you get a divide, so you get R squared is just now. I think we get exactly 28 here. We got a nice number for once. And then throw across the square to get square root. Running out of space, but I'll squeeze it in here. I'm getting 5.29. A few people got it wrong. I think Jaden got it wrong. Let me know if you saw your mistake. 5.29 is the radius. Right, so take down my work if you got it wrong.